Oh, I can't hear you.
We may not have said anything. Can you hear
Sorry.
me, Margaret?
Oh, sorry, I had myself on mute, so it's good to see you.
Yes, like old times to some extent.
That's right, get the band back together.
Just to let you all know, we're going to go live on the city's social media channels at 10:59. I know we're still waiting on a bunch of members. I'm wondering if the power outage has affected who's going to be able to attend today. I haven't heard any.
It's definitely in the downtown area. That's why I came into City Hall.
Yeah.
The City Hall isn't working.
I thought that I was not going to be able to get in because my power was off for about 2 hours. It came on about 10:20 or something like that.
Well, yeah. I was concerned for a moment, but I think for Jeff, Jeff's power came on within 45 minutes. And then,
So it was out in the downtown area?
Mhm.
Yeah, Jeff and I are in the same grid, I think. We were 45 minutes.
Yeah, we didn't lose any power down here near the university. We've had it all.
No, there was one of our deputy city managers, there's like a map that just kind of shows like this V that happens, and then half of the mall is totally fine, and then it just kind of spreads out into Martha Jefferson and downtown. There was like some kind of busted transformer.
Oh.
Sounds exciting.
Because I'm out on Pantops, and it was out, part of out here, so.
Yeah.
Good morning, Philip, and welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dee.
Hi.
Hi, Jenny. I was relieved to hear that you didn't lose power. I was worried that our acting chair wouldn't be able to attend the meeting.
No, actually, I'm not at home this morning, so I'm at another location and I have power.
That's good.
There may not be any at your house, I can tell you that. So
I've had an unexpected development. There is a robotic vacuum cleaner that has just turned itself on, and I need to go chase it. Because
And I love those things.
I know, I feel like I need to apologize in advance because we have 2 dogs, and the bigger the meeting I attend, the more likely it is that they're gonna like cause a ruckus.
Yeah, been there.
Yeah.
So how extensive was this power outage? I noticed it going down Park Street.
yeah, there's a map that was sent to us, and it kind of had this kind of formation going off into like the Martha Jefferson side, and then off into the downtown, and then over into Star Hill some.
Wow.
But it was some kind of transformer bust. But they say that, it's kind of slowly getting back in, but they said it might not be till 3 p.m. for some users.
Wow.
So
Wow. I just noticed traffic lights were out.
yes, there was a few. It was just kind of intermittent though. There was no like real consistency.
Wow.
I thought it was the insurrection starting, so.
Gee.
We should laugh. That's just
No.
real these days. Oh my God.
Yeah, is there a start date for that?
Oh, good.
Good morning, Jelaine. I think we're still waiting on, as far as I know, Elisa was still planning to come.
I see she just popped on.
She's here.
Oh, hi, Elisa. Sorry, I wasn't looking. And then I'm not sure if Clay is planning to come, but then otherwise that should be everybody.
And what numbers do we need for a quorum?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're fine.
We're fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you do know, I did mention to staff, I do have to cut out early, but I hope that doesn't affect the quorum stress. I don't think it does. I think we're good. And Jordy isn't able to join us today, but it sounds like he'll be reconvening shortly with us. So.
And I think you all handle all of the public comment. Are you able to see how many people have called in from the public?
Yes, I can see the who's in the waiting room, and when we get to the public comment section, they can raise their hands
Okay.
if they care to speak.
Them.
Yeah.
Right. We don't see them and we don't see their numbers, right? Or do
You
we?
can see their names if you click on the participants at the bottom. It'll show you there's 13 panelists, and then you click on the tab for attendees are 6, and you can see the names of those attendees.
Okay, great. Okay.
You won't be able to see their faces though.
It's just like a regular Zoom then.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Great. Well, then
Well,
let me go ahead and get started because we've got a lot to do.
sure. I will go ahead and give a brief introduction. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the October 2020 Charlottesville Historic Resources Committee virtual meeting. We should now be live on the city's social media channels. My name is Robert Watkins. I'm city staff, and I'll be making sure that today's meeting runs smoothly on the virtual side of things. This is the HRC's first virtual meeting, and thanks everybody for your flexibility in agreeing to meet online. Before I hand things over to Acting Chair Genevieve Keller, who will preside over today's meeting, I'm going to go over a few guidelines and housekeeping tips to make sure that today's meeting runs smoothly. Whenever you as a committee vote on an action, I'll call each of you one by one in a roll call vote, just for the sake of our minutes. For members of the public who are on the call right now who'd like to provide comment, our public comment portion is at the beginning of the meeting. In order to provide any comment, we ask that you register for the meeting if you haven't already. You'll become an attendee, and then when we get to the comment portion of the agenda, you can raise your hand using the raise hand feature, and I will unmute you, and then you can speak for 2 minutes. Or if you're calling in on your phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand, and then I'll unmute you as well. Finally, it's time for me to hand things over to Ms. Keller, who's presiding over the meeting. But throughout the meeting, please feel free to ask me any additional questions about technical issues. Thanks.
Thanks, Robert. Good morning to all. I'm calling our meeting to order along with fellow committee member Elisa Diamond, who is the co-chair. We were formerly co-vice chairs. Our committee has not met for 7 months, so this is a reunion of sorts and also kind of a new start. We have a lot of work to do. First, we will miss Madeline Hawks, who was our previous chair and who had a long history with the committee. We're very pleased today to have new appointments and reappointments from council. So welcome to all returning members, new members, and interested parties and members of the public. As we begin our work together or re-begin this work, let's please acknowledge the long natural and cultural history of our city and indeed our region, paying homage to this place as the homeland of the Monicans, and acknowledge also that our history is painfully and integrally related to the history and legacy of Virginia's centuries of enslavement. We know that some of that history is tangible and visible, but much of it has been hidden and destroyed and suppressed and misrepresented. Our current charge includes identifying and learning more and educating the public about all of our history and not just what has been celebrated and honored in the past. Our committee cannot do everything that needs to be done. It can highlight issues and personalities and trends and events, and hopefully we can partner and ally with others to have a broader effect. The public needs to be aware that everyone on this committee serves as an uncompensated volunteer, and we appreciate the substantial efforts of everyone. And I thank all of you and value you as colleagues. And I'm really excited that we're having a restart this morning. Let's begin with introductions. I think Robert introduced himself. Is there any other staff that should be introduced today, Robert?
I'm here.
Okay, say hi, Jeff.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's been a long week, everyone. Good morning, Jeff Werner. I'm the preservation design planner for the city, and Robert and I work together as staff for the Historic Resources Committee. So good morning, everyone. Glad to see you all back.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you. I'm a long-term member of the committee. I am a native of Charlottesville, grew up in the Belmont community, have lived in North Downtown for several decades. Before that, lived in the Charlottesville High School and Greenbrier neighborhoods briefly. By profession, I'm an architectural historian and preservation planner, and I'm active in statewide preservation efforts. Let's just introduce the rest of our committee. Elisa, would you like to go first?
Sure, I can go next. My name is Elisa Ugie Diamond. I'm a landscape architect by profession, but I'm currently a PhD candidate in the UVA program for the constructed environment, where I'm studying race, space, and capitalisms to tell the short version. I've lived in Charlottesville for about 12 years now, but also went to UVA as an undergrad and grew up in Lexington, Virginia. So spent most of my life here in Central Virginia. Trying to think of anything else I should mention. Oh yes, I am associated with the UVA Equity Center, so I'm excited to kind of help connect the city with some UVA institutions, as well as the teaching I do over there. So yeah, thank you all.
And we have a council liaison. Heather, would you like to say something?
Yes, hello, good morning, everyone. I'm Heather Hill, and I've been council liaison to this committee for the last 2.5 years. And just want to say how I just have seen this committee go through some transition, and I just feel really confident that where we are as a committee, and really want to welcome also the new members that are joining us. A lot of productive work is in process and is ahead. And I understand the frustration with having such a pause, as we were having so much momentum for a while given COVID, but I'm excited to see this committee reconvening. And I do want to clarify that we do have approval to have subcommittee meetings, so that council recognizes just the amount that's on this committee right now, and that there's going to require additional meetings. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that, and just thank everyone for their efforts that are ongoing, and a lot of important issues that this committee is facing on the forefront.
Thanks, Heather. Dee Dee?
Sure. Hello, I'm Dee Dee Smith. I started out on this committee as the council liaison when I was on council, and then continued as a citizen. I have my background as it relates to Historic Resources Committee is very much centered out in the county in the Ivy Creek Natural Area Hydraulic Community that has very close ties to city history, and have been involved with African American history in particular for decades now. Yeah, that's probably the most relevant. Thank you.
Thanks. Sally?
Hi, yeah, I'm Sally Duncan. I've lived in the Charlottesville area for about 5 years. I have 5 kids, and we live out in the county. I'm a grad student at UVA studying race and religion, and I'm just very interested in local history and how space informs how we think about ourselves and our history.
Thank you. Margaret, hello. I think you're muted.
Okay. Okay. I'm Margaret O'Brien. My husband and I have lived in Charlottesville for 45 years. I'm a native of another county in Virginia, native Virginian. I'm from Franklin County originally. I'm a professional librarian by trade. I have worked with the University of Virginia Library in the Jefferson Madison Regional Library, the public library, and most recently for 33 years, I was the librarian for the Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society, and I retired from that earlier this year, but have had a long interest in local history and in working with resources and people dealing with local history.
Thanks, Margaret. Ellen, can you go next?
Sure. I'm Ellen Wagner, and I'm a filmmaker by profession. I've been on the committee for several years now. I have a longstanding interest also in local history and preservation issues, and yeah, I'm glad that the committee is back together again. My husband and I have lived here and our family in Charlottesville for almost 29 years. It'll be 29 years this Sunday. So.
Quite an anniversary.
Yes.
Jelaine, hi.
Hi there, I'm Jelaine Schmidt. I'm a professor of religious studies at UVA. I teach about religion in the African diaspora in Latin America and the Caribbean. So I'm really interested in the nexus between history of slavery and local histories. I do a lot of public history projects around town, and really it's really gratifying to see there's so much public interest in local history these days. It's hard to keep up even with it, but I'm happy to give it a whirl here on the committee. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have I called on all of the returning members of the committee? Did I miss anyone? Okay, then we're really happy to have our new members with us today. I see Phil Varner, whom I don't know, but I'm glad to get to know you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Phil Varner. I've been living in Charlottesville most recently for, I think, 8 years now. And prior to that was an undergrad and grad student at UVA. I'm a software developer by profession. And my interest in local history is actually pretty recent, prompted in large part by Jelane's public history work, particularly around the Confederate statues and other forms of memorialization locally. So I'm really excited to be on the committee, and I hope to learn a lot from everyone.
Great, thank you. And I see Rachel Lloyd.
So let me unmute myself. Good morning, everybody. I'm really delighted to be here with you and joining you all in the work that you've been accomplishing for a long time. So I've been living in Charlottesville almost 30 years now. Like Elisa, I hail from Lexington. So Central Virginia has been my home for most of my life. I practice here in Charlottesville as a historical landscape architect and historian and preservation planner. I work for a large international architecture and engineering firm, so my work takes me all over the place, but I've been very gratified to work on a volunteer basis on the Place Urban Design Committee. I just rolled off of that, but I did that for several years, and as a part of that work, also served on some steering committees, including the Blue Ribbon Commission and West Main Design and many other steering committees as well. So that's been keeping me busy. I'm very excited to be focused on historic resources now, and I'm thrilled to be working with all of you.
Great. Well, you can see we have a wonderful group, and I think we'll all have a lot of challenges and a lot of, hopefully even some fun working together, if I'm allowed to say that. So I'm going to hand this back to Robert and Joe Rice, or whoever is handling the public comment. And we welcome public comment this morning. I think we're going to stick to our 2-minute rule, and I'll let Robert handle that however he's going to do it.
Sure. So our public comment policy for the Historic Resources Committee, we allow 10 minutes of public comment, and speakers may speak for a maximum of 2 minutes and shall begin by identifying their name and address. So I see some hands raised already in the queue. So first, I'm going to unmute Jim Hingley. And you may speak for 2 minutes. So I'm going to unmute you now. Hi, Jim, you're online.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to address the committee this morning. I came to Charlottesville in 1971, so I've been in the area a long while. Currently, I'm the Commonwealth's attorney for Albemarle County, and my workplace is the Albemarle County General District Court building in the basement. So I spend most of my work life in Court Square in downtown Charlottesville. I am here to speak on behalf of the proposal that has been submitted to City Council and now referred to the Historic Resources Committee on a historic name designation, honorary name designation for a street. And the application for the name designation is for Gregory Swanson. The place is 3rd Street, and 3rd Street is important in this application because it runs alongside of what is now the Jefferson Madison Regional Library downtown. Formerly was a federal court building and U.S. Post Office. It was in that federal court that Gregory Swanson's case was heard, requiring the court required his admission to the University of Virginia Law School. This occurred in 1950, and so it was a historic decision, a historic civil rights decision that was helping to pave the way for Brown versus Board of Education, which was 4 years later. The NAACP was vitally involved in this lawsuit, and among the others representing Gregory Swanson in this historic case were Thurgood Marshall, Oliver Hill, and Spotswood Robinson. So we're asking for historic name designation to commemorate that local civil rights history that has national significance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jim. Next, we have Kristen Zakos. Kristen, I will now allow you to talk. Hi, you're up.
Hi, I'm Kristen Sakis, and I live on Otter Street in Charlottesville. And I'd just like to add my voice to those calling for the honorary naming of 3rd Street by the library in memory of Gregory Swanson. He was the first Black student admitted to any Southern white university when a federal judge in downtown Charlottesville in 1950 ordered that he be admitted to UVA's law school. I was on city council when we started the honorary street naming process, and I can attest that this was the very kind of recognition we had in mind for it. We know that many physical markers of Charlottesville's Black history have been erased over the years, and an observation like an honorary street naming helps to place that history in a visible place for residents and visitors to learn about it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Keller, I don't see any other hands raised to provide public comment.
Okay. Well, thanks, Robert. That went very well. So we can go back to our formal agenda now, and thank you to the members of the public who spoke with us tonight. I mean, this morning. I'm so used to meetings at night. So that our next item of business is we have an election because neither Elisa nor I are able to continue as co-chairs. And so we will need a new chair and vice chair. And I will accept nominations from the floor.
So just to clarify, neither of you are able to serve in the chair or the vice chair capacity.
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
I spoke with Rachel Lloyd, or communicated with her, and she is interested in being nominated. Just if anyone is willing to, because I don't think staff can throw that out there. But
Let's say willing.
I don't think we can take a nomination from you, Jeff.
No, it's not a nomination. I'm just merely
for a suggestion.
I would like to nominate Rachel Lloyd to be chair.
I will certainly second that also.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Are there any additional nominations?
I'd love to make a couple nominations for vice chair.
Oh, that's great. And we can do it all at once.
Yeah, I'd love to nominate Jelaine Schmidt if she'd be willing, and also Phil Varner if he'd be willing.
Are the nominees
co-vice chair mode like we did before?
Yeah, the group can decide, but
yeah, I think that's great. I would second that.
So we have a motion and a second for both positions. Are all the nominees are present? Are you all willing to serve?
I'm willing to serve.
Elaine? Phil?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Any discussion?
Phil's like 10 minutes in. He's like,
okay,
what's happening?
I mean, so, but we need to choose. We have 2 for vice chair, right, or not?
We have done a co-chair structure.
Oh, we have 2. Oh, okay. Well, that makes it easy. Okay.
Yeah, we previously had 2 co-chairs. I'm 2 vice chairs. I'm not quite sure why we did, but we did.
Okay. Okay. Good. Just clarify.
Why not? The more the merrier.
I didn't remember that.
I just wanted to clarify if we can put on the record, like, what are the expected duties of a chair or co-chair?
Robert or Jeff, do you want to?
Well, primarily, and what Madeline would do is, I don't know, a week or 2 out, because we do have to post this a week ahead of the meeting. Just say, hey, all right, here's what I'm thinking for the agenda. Just get her feedback on it. What we thought would work or not work. And then second, presiding over the meeting. And I think, the third piece is going to be, I think we all recognize we have a tremendous amount of stuff that people are asking us to comment on and address and do. And so it's I think the other role will be someone that can really help delegate and keep things moving forward. So those are how I see it.
I would say relative to the agenda, at any time, any committee member can put input through the chair for that agenda. So all of us would like to have a voice in the agenda, but that's at least the point person who works with staff is kind of how we even do it with council. So
Yeah, I think on that being said, I think I'll pass and appreciate the nomination, Elisa. But you know, I think someone with a little more time and maybe experience with Robert's Rules of Order might be suited to this. So, thank you.
Thanks,
And I
Joanne.
think, don't our bylaws also say, just for the vice chair position, that vice chair will preside over the meeting in case the chair isn't at the meeting? So that's
Yes, that's
one of the main
correct.
things, right?
So we could have another vice chair if anyone would like to make another nomination.
Ellen, are you at all willing?
I honestly, I would prefer not to. Thank you, though.
I was going to see if Ms. Duncan be willing to do it.
Oh, there you are, right next to me.
Sally?
I mean, I am. I just, as long as it's not very time intensive.
I nominate Sally.
Yeah, great.
Okay. is there a
We'll work
second?
with you, Sally.
You hedged, Sally.
I'm willing to learn.
Okay, great.
If we're honest, like honestly, Rachel's kind of taking on the most here by being the point person, but it's just helpful to have additional support, especially when you can't make a meeting and
Right.
and then you're working with Phil.
Jelaine has withdrawn and we have a motion for Sally. Do we have a second for Sally?
I second Sally.
Okay. If
But
there's no
again, she and Phil are going to be we were talking about co-vice chairs. Okay.
Exactly. So if there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor, please say aye.
Well, I think we have to do a roll call. Sorry.
Yes, please.
Okay. You're a
Yes.
parliamentarian. That's terrific. Okay. Let me.
Robert will
Valerie.
roll call us.
Okay.
I will.
And we're going
It-
to vote on everything together. So, right. The motion is kind of a combined motion.
Okay, Robert.
Yes. So Miss O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. Varner, Miss Smith,
Yes.
Miss Duncan,
Yes.
Miss Lloyd,
Yes.
Miss Wagner,
Yes.
Miss Schmidt,
Sure. Yes.
Miss Diamond,
Yes.
and Miss Keller.
Yes.
Oh, and Ms. Hill.
Oh, and Miss Hill. Sorry. Oh, yes. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, great. Congratulations. We have new officers. And Rachel, would you like to preside or?
Why don't you finish this meeting and next month I will, I'll work with, to preside over the next meeting. Is that okay?
That's fine with me. Would Phil or Sally like to preside?
You're doing great.
Okay.
Pretty stacked agenda. I think it's yours, Jenny.
Okay, we will move on to approving the agenda. We have an agenda from Robert and Jeff. Would anyone like to amend that agenda? No? Okay, then it just disappeared from my screen, so I'm going to have to call it right back up. Robert, it's disappeared. Can you help me out for a minute and tell me what the next item is? I think it's the minutes.
Oh, yeah. The minutes are next.
Okay, so we have the minutes from our last meeting. Do we have a motion for approval or any corrections or additions?
I'm happy to move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Not all of us were here then, but
I
Right.
second.
Okay,
Okay. I will call another vote.
and anyone who wasn't here can just abstain. You don't have to say no, just abstain.
okay.
Okay. Miss Keller,
Aye.
Miss Hill,
Yes.
Miss Schmidt,
Mhm. Yes.
Miss Smith, Ms. Diamond? Ms. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Varner?
Abstain.
Ms. O'Brien?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Abstain.
And Ms. Duncan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. So we have meeting notes approved for our last meeting. And now we get to the real work of our committee, which is our committee activities. Since we haven't met for 7 months, it's probably a good idea to review the status and objectives of the projects that we had ongoing before we went on hiatus. So I think the first thing we need to talk about is the Vinegar Hill Park commemoration. We were dealing with markers for that. Is there an update from staff?
Really, not much of an update. We put these together just to sort of as a summary of what we've been up to, and hopefully we can have some discussion about maybe it gets prioritized if we need to change anything. The only update I have is relative to well, our banners are still up there, and that, I do see people looking at them, which is nice. The work on reconstructing the mall for ADA accessibility is not on the table. So the mall surface will be reconstructed as what was approved in the site plan. And you all had discussed requesting from council a reevaluation of the signage and markers that the plan that was approved, and also encouraging council to consider moving forward with the phase 2, which is described. There's a link in the information that we shared, and so there were 2 phases to Vinegar Hill Park. So you had all left that as possibly reevaluating the design for the markers and the signage, and encouraging council to move forward with phase 2. So that's where we had left it. There's nothing new to add to that. And we can pick that up on a future agenda for further discussion.
I believe to add to that, we had approval to do 7 more of the temporary signs. And could you remind us how much longer the construction site will be active and the outer wall will be there for temporary signage?
I got to tell you that project is humming. I'll give a lot of credit to those folks. They are keeping things moving up there. My guess is, maybe into late spring, early summer. We'll have to see how long the wall is up and when they start putting them all back together. But my best guess, we certainly have got 6-7 months. So yeah, that option is available if you all wanted to produce something additional.
Okay, thanks. That's disappointing about the ADA. That was something we'd hope could be taken care of, but I guess that will wait for another day. Let's move on to Court Square markers. I know that's something that we were really in the weeds on, and a project that's been going on for several years as new information became available, and all kinds of issues about that area, particularly knowing that there would be changes, but not knowing when they would come or what would happen. Is there any update from staff on Court Square markers?
I don't think we have any new updates to provide.
We just sort of stopped. We were having subcommittee meetings all the time. What's the pleasure of the committee of how we would proceed on Court Square markers, given where we are 7 months after we abruptly stopped?
Jelaine, you were quite involved in that, weren't you?
Elisa, Jordy, and I think Sally as well. I hope I'm not leaving it. And Jenny, you were sometimes there too.
Yeah, we were having those meetings at the libraries. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we were kind of humming right along. And then, a lot of things kind of kind of came into, I mean, like Jenny said, there's just a lot that's kind of up in the air now, especially with the anticipated, like, was it $45 million renovation of Court Square that's going to be going on in the near future. And then, of course, 2 weeks ago, one of the major landmarks of Court Square, that is the Johnny Rep statue, was removed. So a lot of things are kind of in flux, right now. It just, help me out, other folks, like, Elisa, like, kind of where, where things were at. I mean, another thing that kind of came up unexpectedly also in July, or in February, right as things, just before things ground to a halt, was, of course, dealing with the slave auction block site, and what to do there, yeah. So I don't know. I mean, like, help me out, others, kind of where.
Well, I'll jump in because I know I've talked to some of you individually. One, the signage, we had the signage, the various things that were to be installed on lampposts and replace the black granite that was there. And then there was also the issue that what to do at Number Nothing, and that had that really was anchored in being able to do that community outreach, which I think was a great idea. So I think until we all know what's happening with COVID and that process, I don't see how that can go forward. And my personal opinion, I feel like signage might just be, we learned a lot when we were talking about the West Main Street project and talking to some folks, and this is 2 years ago now, and people felt really strongly about, well, who's writing it? What does it say? Who changes it? What's almost the idea of putting up signs that suddenly become static and we have to deal with. I don't know, maybe that's not the best idea. And my thoughts have been really to go back to the walking tour map as an ideal way to and that gives us something that's a lot more flexible than several $1,000s in signage. So that's my 2 cents. But I think until you all are able to do that public outreach, I think a lot of the conversation at Court Square might just have to be tabled until then. Does that help?
Go ahead, Sally.
We were so close to having the text done that I feel like we should finish that, and that's something, I don't know legally, but we can do that over Google Docs.
Right.
And I would love to, even if we don't do anything with it, to just have it done and to say, these are rewritten. We put all this work into it and we're so close to being done. I would really love to finish that and have that ready.
Yeah, I think where we landed in terms of the Court Square marker process was that Robert had laid out a really great schedule for us to just finish them. And maybe it's worth having
it wouldn't take long.
Yeah, maybe it's worth having a subcommittee meeting just to talk about okay, everything is going on that's going on, but
right.
talk about that and to see if we should just continue on that.
In terms of the subcommittee meetings that we are allowed to have, there are our communications staff has allowed 6 subcommittee meetings for all boards and commissions among the city, and we can do a month, so we can do first come first serve and claim one of those subcommittee meetings, but we won't be able to meet in the same quantity of times that we were in person back in February and March.
Oh, so that's 6 across all the committees.
Right, not 6. Yeah, so.
Got it. Okay.
One other strategy that could be had is that you also have your main meetings. So we have this meeting right now that can go up to, I think that the communications team has said up to 3 hours now is what we've adopted. And we don't always need a full committee for 3 hours, that we could use some of that time of our main meeting to break out into subcommittees as well, or to do it on a rotating basis. So I just want to kind of provide that other option, as I recognize that we do need more than just that time.
That's a really good idea, Heather.
Yeah,
I don't know that we're prepared to do that today, but certainly the Court Square markers, the slave auction block, and the walking tour, all of those probably need to reconvene at the subcommittee level and come back to the committee with a recommendation.
And it did feel like the Court Square markers were almost there. And the other one that felt like, and I'm just mining my memory here, was the other Vinegar Hill posters. I mean, I felt like they were constructed.
Yeah, we had them almost ready.
Yeah, so I mean, it would be really nice to focus on those things that are really close. And I do wonder too, whether we can look at the Court Square markers under the same model as the Vinegar Hill posters, which were not nearly as, aren't permanent. I mean, they're just not permanent, and but are reproducible, you know, in some sort of economical way. And we could do that strategy too. That doesn't mean they can't be permanent markers at this point, but are we ready?
Robert, do we have the capacity to do breakout rooms as part of this city Zoom?
I don't know the answer to that. Certainly not today,
No,
necessarily.
I was wondering if the next time we could have those three committees perhaps break out: the walking tour, the auction block, and the Court Square. Maybe they could break out for 20 or so minutes and then come back as a committee of the whole.
Sure, I'll talk to her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know
I've
there
been to
is
several things where there've been breakout rooms, and that works pretty well.
Yeah, there is some overlap between subcommittee membership, for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I thought maybe we could put Court Square and auction block together and walking tour separately, and then try to bring them back.
I'll talk to our communication staff and figure that out.
I like Jenny's idea for combining Court Square markers and slave auction block, you know, selfishly speaking, because I'm on both of those. But also I think that, you know, especially, you know, with the uncertainty going forward about, you know, COVID and, you know, and this sort of thing, I think it's nice to have things in place that are publicly visible, because when people are walking, you know, because people are, you know, that's kind of the only, you know, connection or interface that we're having, you know, kind of with the public now, is, you know, things that can be done, you know, socially distant, but people still kind of participatory, you know, in a public space. So I think it's nice to kind of keep that rolling.
Well, a lot for us to pick up and try to come back with new strategies. Dee Dee,
I'm sorry, Jenny, really quick. I have to apologize. I let some folks know that I did have a limited schedule today, and it's my fault, and I just apologize. But I know there's a lot of other things on this agenda that involve some of the council direction. And I do believe that between what I've provided, as well as Councilor Payne and the staff, that there is a lot of information for the committee to consider. But I'm happy to follow up any loose ends that come out of this discussion that might need more clarification, especially related to the honorary street renaming. But I just want to thank the efforts so far for people who've already started looking into that. And again, I apologize that my schedule just got the better of me today.
no, we certainly understand. Is there anything you'd like to say about the street renaming before you leave us?
The scope of it really is, first and foremost, I think that we've been provided with the current policy as it exists, as former Councilor Sakos alluded to earlier. I think we're at a point where we just really want your input on what that policy should look like. Obviously, there's a certain number of requests that are in the queue right now, but I think that really nailing down that policy and understanding how between your committee and council are going to vet these requests is going to be really important. And so I think that's what really council is hoping to rely on this committee to help shape that policy. And I know that Ms. Duncan has already done some researching of that, and I've already thanked her earlier for those efforts already, because I think that's just going to really help us get to a better place with how we, you know, receive these requests and how we process them.
I want to throw one thing out just while we have this discussion. Call it honorary street naming. The renaming, people have been a little bit alarmed that we're renaming streets. So just let's emphasize it is honorary names given to existing streets. Sorry.
But broader than that, as Councilor Payne forwarded some background information, and I believe Ms. Thomas has as well, that there is a bigger picture even beyond the honorary street naming in terms of how we want to acknowledge public spaces throughout the city, which is something that former Councilor Signer and Bellamy had raised and committed to. And so it is a bigger scope. And so I think that as we're looking at this, we should look at it as holistically as what this committee is willing to kind of take on. So
that makes a lot of sense. Thanks, Heather, and thanks,
Thank
time
you all.
being with us this morning. We really appreciate it.
Nice to see you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Dee Dee, did you want to say anything more about the walking tour map? I know there are others involved, but I sort of associate you with having done a lot of work on that. Is there anything we need?
Yeah, it was mostly ended up being Jordy and I. And I didn't think we were that close. We were really struggling with balance because it's sort of too long. I mean, and really the fundamental structure of it. So I wouldn't say though the walking tour map is ready to go by any means. And at some point we might want to talk about it as a whole group, really in terms of its structure. Because I think it could go pretty quickly. There's not that many words to it, but it's really about numbers of sites and which I think I would hope and Heather just left, but this idea of a holistic look at everything we're doing. And I like to, personally, I see it kind of in a tour way that everything should tie together and each of these pieces could contribute to people really learning about a much, broader geographic area and broader story if you combine them. Anyway.
Yeah. I certainly like the holistic approach to this rather than sort of scattershot like we've been sometimes in the past because of circumstances, something coming up. Robert, would you like us to move to the street naming now and have a few minutes about that? I know we can't develop a new policy or revise a policy or make recommendations for council today, but how do you want to introduce this topic to the committee?
I know, Robert, sorry. I know I've already been contacted by people and even the media saying, all right, is the committee going to rename streets today? And when will we know? When are they going to make decisions? So I've offered to folks that the most important thing is we have two issues. One is there's a policy, which you all have seen, it's one page, and that's pretty much it, or I guess 2 pages. And council's asked, do we have some recommendations of altering that? And I think that's a discussion that it would take some time. As far as the current requests, there are 11 of them. That's really, I mean, entirely up to you all if you wanted to make any recommendations about any of them, all of them, some of them, none of them. I know Sally had done some work and very much appreciate that. But so there's sort of those two sides to it. I think expressing that council would like us to review the policy and let's plan for a discussion at a later date and have a the conversations needed. Second, on these names, if you all want to take any action or if you want to defer that until November. It's your pleasure.
Thoughts from the committee?
I think one question I have is a clarification on some of these street names are not particularly related to historic resources. I know that the Black Lives Matter one was already approved by council, but had that been an option still, that is, I think I would consider it more of a values-oriented naming rather than a historic resource-oriented naming. And likewise, Tony Bennett and possibly the Indigenous people one. Oh, sorry, I meant to actually say the sister city one with Italy, whose name escapes me right now. That those are not necessarily related to the Historical Resources Committee, but they have been sort of kicked over to us for lack of a better location, and whether we would be charged with a general historic or a general street naming policy or specifically related to historic names and naming after people with historic value.
It seems like it would make more sense to create a policy before we approve or have any opinions on street names. That way it's fair.
Yeah.
I agree with that. And again, I think, I thought all of the research you did, Sally, was great. The honorary policy we have now isn't that bad. But, but there's some really interesting issues such as sort of time, are there time limits on these? And do they tie together? Again, it's been really, sort of here and there up to now, but it would be a really interesting exploration of as to, again, whether you can tell a bigger story with honorary names. How long should be, what geographic length should they be? And, all those questions, they're not that hard, but they should at least be determined.
Just for the sake of the public, I did some research on 7 cities kind of across the country, because there were not a lot of Virginia cities that have stated policies. And just kind of roughly in general, most cities have time limitations, space limitations. Usually the honorary streets are 1 block. Most of the cities had significant fees associated with the application to cover the cost of the sign installation. And most of them were people, and the people had to be related to the city and preferably related to the street that was being honored.
And the only piece of that I really objected to were the fees.
Correct.
Because that's clearly the highest bidder kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I thought some of the other ones were interesting, and I might throw in, this sounds a little weird, but I'm not sure we should name something after someone who's alive.
That was a couple of the cities did have, they either had to be dead or like over 70 years old.
Really?
It did seem that with the ones that have a term limit on them, if you're trying to celebrate some event or a person's achievement in the moment, that something that's 1 year or 3 years or something might make some sense. And I can think of some people who are alive now who are sort of living legends in Charlottesville, and it might be nice to honor them while they're still with us and they can enjoy that. But I think that's a conversation we have another day. My only concern is that I know there's some members of the public who are really very anxious to have their proposal move forward. And I wonder if we could find out if any of these are time sensitive. Robert and Jeff, if any of these are intended to coincide with an event or an anniversary, something like that might move the urgency up. Otherwise, just
I'm not aware of any. And this sort of I don't want to say came out of the blue. That's not the right way to say it, but it was. We didn't even know. We were told late September, hey, we might be able to have group meetings, so we've sort of been scrambling, and then council sent this to us. So I don't know of any deadlines or anything. And also I agree. I mean, my son just graduated from Clemson, and all over that town there's streets named after half the football team or whatever. But I think that something like that is not really under our purview. That would probably be best. Those deferred back to council. If they want to do that, they can do it. But I don't particularly see Mr. Bennett or Coach Bennett as a historic resource. So I agree on that point.
But while we're thinking about it, we might just drop the genres in there. Like you said, about a sports team, or if the high school orchestra wins a festival.
There you go. They do that a lot.
Yeah, those are things that maybe they've been happening with banners, and maybe we say the temporary thing should happen with banners and the street, but those are things we should discuss. I just don't want the public to be discouraged, because I know they have strong feelings. And I personally like the idea of looking broadly at not just streets, but maybe looking at buildings and parks and other things, that rooms and buildings, like at the high school, the MLK Performing Arts Center, that has a lot of name recognition apart from the school. And maybe we need to talk to other divisions of city government, like parks, for example. Do they have new things that are naming opportunities? And we could come up with a list of names and then a list of places, so that they wouldn't necessarily have to be streets.
And that is an intersection that we have right now, that the schools have only yesterday announced the formation of the of the school name evaluation committee in Charlottesville City Schools. That's to meet for the first time next week. So that's going to be an ongoing process until recommendations have been made and enacted.
So
I think
maybe
an-
we can coordinate with all of those groups and kind of come up with a master list of names and then the kinds of opportunities that might exist.
Yeah, I feel like I did see in some of the materials that there was a question about sort of independent vetting of the individuals who may be put forward. Whether there's a way to just confirm that the city wants to go ahead with renaming on an honorary naming for a particular individual. So I think that might be another part of the policy that we could mull over, is whether that kind of independent historical background should be described and included in any decision making.
So sounds really good. Anything else on naming, or should we move on? I know there's some new developments at Penn Park that Jeff will probably update us on.
I just have one other thing, and that is we've used a distinctive color for our historic signs below. It's a sort of a chocolate brown, but it's been used in other signs around town. And I was a little concerned that there's going to be some confusion. I just want to put that out there. I know that's sort of doesn't feel like it's certainly in the purview of this committee, but I think we should be aware of how historic signs are being used around town. Like for instance, and I should have checked that it was still there, Jefferson Park Avenue, they needed to replace the green sign that says Jefferson Park Avenue right by Cleveland. It's now an historic district and they made it in this color. And I thought, that's weird. I mean, I think they did it because it's an historic district, but I don't know who made that decision. Anyway, it's a small piece, but I think it's an important piece just to be aware.
Well, you've got a lot of work to do, Rachel, and I know you'll do a great job at that. Okay, so public, please be patient with us as we try to make this holistic.
So
some sense.
the question would be, and because I will be asked, sort of picking up on what Sally did, can we plan to have a sign by sign discussion, or not a name by name discussion in November, or do you all see that the policy needs to be reevaluated first? And Jenny, you had asked if there's any timeline. The only timeline I know is some impatience from folks that have made the submittals, and Phil, you're right. I do think there was a bit punted to us. So yeah, all eyes are on us.
Right. Yeah. But if it were something like the 50th anniversary of a certain court decision or some event that happened, then maybe we would need to be aware of that, and you could kind of move it up on the list and
just here's a
recommendation to council.
Yeah, it's the 70th. Actually, it is the 70th anniversary of the Gregory Swanson decision. Just FYI.
Coming up in 2021, right?
This year, it was 1950.
Okay.
And what I'll report back to Keena Thomas, is the clerk of City Council, and is that you all are we're going to add this more thoroughly to the agenda in November. However, if council chooses to move forward in these individual names, that's certainly in their purview. But just all I can offer. Okay, thanks.
And I would also be interested now in making a motion to push the sister city one back to council, because I feel like that is under whatever policy we develop for historic resources and people. I don't think that one would fall under it at all. And if they want to move forward with that.
Yeah, I agree. And it seems like there should be one if the other sister cities have one, but it shouldn't fall into the policy. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it seems to me where we would interface with that is if we're planning something and there is a street that's related geographically to an individual we want to honor, maybe the sister cities could bump to another street because they aren't necessarily site specific.
Yeah, and there were some actually, and I didn't. They offered some other alternatives, so I don't think they were entirely wed to that. But yet, again, more that sort of that overlap. I think there's also with 4th Street, there's 2 options for that. So more for our discussion in November. But and then as far as the Tony Bennett, you feel like that falls within a policy discussion, but do you want that one or those names to be deferred back to council or take that up?
I would. I think I agree with Phil, and I don't think that one falls under our purview at all. Or those 2, there were 2 of them.
Yeah. Pick one and
yeah,
dump it to council.
I do wonder if there's any of those that rose so much to the top that we can put our support behind them.
I think my only concern there,
very soon, and I'm hearing Gregory Swanson. I am very much for the Gregory Swanson designation, and I'm hearing that in some other comments. And I love the idea of Vinegar Hill area being honored. Somehow I know there's some naming things, what it would be named, but those 2 in particular.
And to be clear, you're not approving. I
yeah,
think,
right.
Yeah,
I mean,
they just asked what we think.
Support. I'm
right,
just
right.
Support. So.
I think on that note, I would say that I'm strongly in support of one of the 2 options for Vinegar Hill Way or Black History Pathway. But since they do conflict, I think we have some additional discussion to have about how to resolve that. If there was only one of them, I think it would, for me, it would be I would clearly be in favor of it. And then I forgot what point I was going to make.
How do you feel about the Gregory Swanson?
Oh, sorry. That's the other thing I was going to say was that I think that the Gregory Swanson one is particular because we had this question, as Mayor Walker raised at the last city council meeting, of whether that is actually honoring a local Charlottesville resident, as he, while it was an extremely important court case, he only was in Charlottesville for 2 years and has no permanent local connection. And so while we're honoring somebody who was involved in a national case, he was not really considered to be a local. And I would point also to the fact that the Jefferson Madison Regional Library Board has had a subcommittee who has extensively researched this and analyzed it based on their proposal to rename the McIntyre Room at Central to specifically the Swanson Case Courtroom. And they made an intentional decision to not name it after Gregory Swanson specifically, but name it for the court case in which he was involved, given that the court case was really the critical piece, and he was the name on it, but he was only one of the many players, including Thurgood Marshall and Spotswood Robinson and Oliver Hill.
The other thing that this kind of raises too, as far as the Tony Bennett and stuff, is just colors of street signs. If we're going to be in charge of kind of making opinions on historic name street signs, but then there's also honorary street names, should those be the same? Should they be different? Should they just be different colors but have maybe like the same stars by them? That's something to think about too.
Yeah, well, let's save that for when we have a more detailed discussion in November. Maybe we could all send some ideas to Robert about things that have occurred to us that relate to this naming exercise and initiative and how we might handle that. And that's really good information that Phil had about the library. And it also occurs to me is the university may want to have it. I mean, I think they are already engaged in naming and renaming. And is it more appropriate for them to honor Tony Bennett than for us to do that? Or we could decide to do it in in concert, and I imagine the county's going to be doing some naming and renaming as well. They're already engaged. So how do we coordinate so that we make sure that everyone that needs to be recognized is, and that they're in the most appropriate places and venues? It's going to be complicated, but it should be really interesting, and we'll learn a lot in the midst of doing it about people that have been important in our community and made a difference. Sally, do you want to say something?
Just one more quick thing of just the Gregory Swanson case was his admission to UVA, and so it does seem like the part of the responsibility should be on them to also recognize that and honor that if doing the street or the library room isn't appropriate.
So there are a number of significant court cases there, and it seems like we probably do need to acknowledge the Swanson case in some way, either as a city or through the library, and we probably need to have a list of those other significant court cases and how those might be acknowledged in places that are most appropriate to them.
Yeah, I just wonder if the university should take.
Yeah, I mean, having lived through that era, I know how important it was to the community, and I think we need to a little bit of community engagement from people who participated in that, or their parents did.
Well, I do think it actually speaks to an important piece that could be in our policy, which is that the sort of beauty of the Swanson placement is that it's tied to a building. And it's tied to an historic building, and it's tied to an historic building that people do not know was the federal courthouse. You know, and the sort of the fact that, you know, we can bring in a lot of different stories, and you can bring in Brown versus the Board of Education, and we could talk about what the street sign would actually be named, but the significance of this event cannot be underestimated.
And there's
the fact that it's so closely tied to something you can see. Anyway, that's.
Yeah, and there's wonderful photographic documentation. I mean, that landmark photograph of the attorneys in Swanson lined up on the wall, you know, under the gaze of General Lee. I mean, that really is a moment in time, and we have a really powerful photograph. And I would love to see some way that could be incorporated into the places where they actually worked and stood and celebrated and planned their strategies, all of those things. I mean, that's a moment in time, and it's very compelling.
One thing I was going to.
Can we hold all that and move on so we can keep on schedule, unless it's really, really compelling here? Okay, let's move on to Penn Park. I think there's some interesting developments there, right, Jeff?
Yeah, very, very much so. And I didn't want to get too much into any recommendations on the findings. I will be, doesn't look like I can present this to council until the first meeting in November. But as you recall, part of why we looked were some information and obviously some physical evidence suggested unmarked graves at the cemetery at Penn Park. Last December, council approved an examination, and you all also facilitated some of that cost. And we were finally able to get out there in July and do the ground penetrating radar work. And to the east of the 3 family cemeteries, the ground penetrating radar evidence suggests 43 anomalies that are consistent with human burials. They appear to be roughly 3 rows, the majority being outside of the Gilmer and the Craven family plots, which would be consistent with they were slave owners. And there are some burials outside of the Hotop, which the family owned that after after emancipation, which think are likely folks that maybe worked at that at the farm. But by and large, the of what the evidence is, we believe they are almost certainly all, or majority are people who were enslaved at Penn Park. So we will be, I said, I'm sharing this with council. I was hoping that get it to them next week, but either way, and then they will be coming back and asking for your recommendations on what could be done to recognize and to honor or however. So I wanted to get that, knowing that we're limited in our meetings and discussions, I wanted to get that information out to you. When I have the final report, I'll share it with you. It's Ben Ford. Is putting it all together. The other option is the thing is Ben has. We don't know if these burials are so old that it's likely there are some that just simply aren't showing up in the GPR. But we do know the area that most likely there are. If there are additional graves, we know where they are. And so Ben has suggested just doing nothing further. No, like they did at UVA, where they pulled back the ground to determine exactly how many burial shafts there were. Ben's saying, we know there are burials here. We know the area. We set this aside, and let's not disturb the ground any further. And I'll be, presenting that to council as an option that they can make a determination if we should do more. The other piece is that we have no idea who those individuals are. Hopefully this story will be going out, to get it into the media and seek folks who have some oral histories that may connect to this site, and maybe we can put those pieces together. But it really is, I described it to some of you all. I know it's been a fascinating discovery. It's also very sobering and very solemn. And now that I have the images of where the graves are, I said, you can go out there. There's about 10 to 12 depressions on the ground that are very clear, but with the information we have from GPR, you stand there, you really do see how this lays out. And it's, I said, it's very solemn place now. And so I'll be coming back in November, or you will have more information by November, and just to get you all thinking about this is city property, and what steps can the city take. Now, certainly we will be mapping it out and saying, this is a do not touch place. It will be on, the plats. I've alerted the Park and Recs folks that we really should be putting something up so that you're not going to keep people off this ground, but there shouldn't be equipment or anything driving over it. And so that's what I can tell you. And I encourage, if you all have any resources in the community or ways to maybe we can connect the dots with some descendants, I would certainly appreciate any help and any suggestions that you have. So that's the update. If you have any questions, maybe I didn't get everything. Sorry, my camera's not on. I look lousy. It's day 200 and you don't want to see me. So any questions on that?
Do you need an action from us, Jeff?
No.
Recommendation to council from the committee?
No, because when I share this with council, one of their when they approved the work, they said if should graves be found, that the consult with the Historic Resources Committee about recommendations, next steps. So that will certainly, given that we have determined there are graves there, and a lot, that's going to come back to the committee and ask for some recommendations. So I really just wanted to let you all know. I know it's been sort of percolating out there. It was referred to in the story about Daughters of Zion Cemetery, and but it's and we'll have a more thorough discussion in November. That's all. So no actions necessary. But certainly, if you guys have questions or you had some suggestions on just how we treat this or I treat this as a city employee, I'm all ears. I'd appreciate that. Jelaine was super helpful. She and I talked for like an hour the other day, and gave me a tremendous amount of some really good ideas, and I much appreciate that, Jelaine. So, and if any of you all have some suggestions, you can talk to me now, or you can even send them to me. That's fine. And I encourage you to go out there. It is it's a different place with this information in hand.
I was going to ask if anybody on the committee has any direct connections to Lynn Rainville. I know she's done work up there in
I've
Delmora?
talked to Lynn. Yeah,
Oh,
I've been in
good.
contact with her. Yes.
Good, because I was going to say in terms of descendant engagement, she might have some ideas since she's done so much work.
Yeah, and the recommendations come back really that we just have to put it out there that that we know this and in the media, and when people ask, I just repeatedly, to encourage people, if there is a connection that they're familiar with, please talk to us.
So it would be great if it hasn't already been done, and I should know this, presented to the Central Virginia history researchers who just
I haven't
they
shared.
come out of the woodwork with
I
information.
was going to suggest that. That's a really good.
I haven't shared it with anyone. What happened when Ben and I talked about not doing any, physical examination. I said, then what can you give me from a sort of a document, going in the archives from the records, try to just, give me some meat on this, who may these folks have been. So he's been doing some of that. But I've really, this is, having someone tell you there's a cemetery out there with 43 people or possibly more, let's, I don't know, 20, 40, 60. We know there are burials out there. We don't know who any of these people are. And I've been uncomfortable sort of, saying, hey, guess what we found? So I've been waiting for Ben to finish the report, and one of the things we've been taking the time to do is really lay out. We've been anticipating some of the questions from council and just trying to lay all that out. But once I have that report, yeah, I will be circulating it and far and wide.
Who would be best to present it? Would it be Ben?
Well, Ben is lined up to, when this does get presented, to be there to answer questions, because inevitably it'll be, well, how do we know who they are, or what can we do, or what more could be done? And so he can answer that archaeological perspective on what is possible with 200-year-old graves, and then also if council wanted to do something more, what's available, what would they cost, things like that. So
I assume you know who all the families were who were pre-emancipation.
We know Gilmer, we know Craven, and then there's a couple of secondary names, Wirt, but no, I don't know.
People?
The occupancy of Penn Park is actually a lot more extensive than you think. So the Gilmers were there for about 25 years, and then there was a gap, and then the Cravens were there for about 25, 30 years, and then there's a gap, and then the Hotops from around 1866 on. So it's hard to know if maybe people that were there in those intervening years, if they need to bury someone, they put them there. We just don't know. So, but all of it's going to take some diving into, the archives to really, see if names start to come out and things like that. But
well, I'll talk to you independently.
Yeah. Once you see the report, I think that will be helpful because I think it would be great to do some documentary research about, are there things in letters? Are there things in journals? Is there information available that might give us some clues? But we haven't gone that far yet.
One last question. Have you talked to Steve Thompson?
Well, Steve is now the archaeologist for Loudoun County. So Steve has been in the loop on this one. In fact, and I've told people this, when Steve and Ben went out there last year, when I asked them to look out at the site, they came out, they were so excited. And I've never seen either of them ever be this excited about anything. They were so confident in what they were looking at. But yeah, Steve's in the loop. But I said, I really have kept it. I've tried not to share it too much, just because I know that this is a really interesting announcement, and it is a large cemetery of unmarked graves on city property. So we want to approach it carefully and appropriately. So
it's really important.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yes.
And I do think that trying to coordinate with people from DHR would make a lot of sense. Maybe, I think they're looking for programs for next year. I don't think they have all of their monthly meetings programmed. So we might consider having a portion of a program where we just update them on what we're doing in the committee and use that as a form of engagement for a number of things that we have going on, since they're descendants and people who are researching other people's descendants.
One thing that there's just one thing that comes to mind to me is that there's a possibility that Shelley Murphy, who has been doing the research on the descendancy project of the enslaved laborers at UVA, I'm remembering in my discussions with her about some of her work that there may be some crossing of people here, particularly with people associated with the Craven family, because I think there's connection with them with UVA and descendancy from workers there. So Shelley may already have some information that might be helpful. I can ask her about that.
And I'd appreciate that. And she's with the university?
Yes, she's the assigned person doing all the research on descendancy of enslaved laborers there, because she's also quite active with the Historical Society too. So, but I'll ask her about any association there.
Fantastic. Thank you.
She's with the President's Commission on Slavery at the university.
Right, also.
And she presented at CVHR last week, and I think she might have mentioned the Craven family. She was talking about the various families who had leases with UVA to provide services. So that's a really good idea. I think that's a good place.
Fantastic.
So I think that let's move on to
Thank
another
you all.
secretary. I think we have an issue we need to act on, right, Jeff, for Daughters of Zion?
You know, and again, it's up to you all. I think we circulated this earlier when the Seville covered that story, which I'm very glad they did. And so talking to Edwina about changing the marker to update it. And is everyone, I'm sorry, you all are familiar with what?
Yeah.
Okay, and so to update
I'm
that.
sorry, Jeff. I'm actually, I don't know who Edwina is.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's it. Edwina St. Rose, and there's some other names. I'm sorry. Edwina's always one.
Bernadette Whitsett.
Yeah, and but the Daughters of Zion Cemetery there, which is at across Oak Street, north of Oakwood Cemetery. Most of you all were involved, and I wasn't. But I think about 10 years ago, there was an effort to kind of re-expose it or rediscover it from the trees and shrubs. And at that time, the estimate was about 300 burials, of which I think about 140 had markers. And it just perchance this in July, when I was out at Penn Park with the GPR folks, the guy said, "Hey, what did you think of 640 graves at Daughters of Zion? Pretty cool." And I had no idea. So that's where, then we took it and got it publicized, which is good. But so, yeah, the sign, updating it to recognize the possibility of the 640 burials, not 300. And I think there was one or two other corrections. Robert, he prepared, well, whatever. He's been talking with the plaque people, and so we'd like to order a plaque and have the one there replaced. And the agreement, I guess, originally was that was part of the city's responsibility, the Historic Resources Committee, and so that's all. If you all would approve it, we can order it, or whatever you all
I'll
wish.
speak up. I've been very involved with it, so.
Okay.
I probably have a little conflict of interest, but I think it's really important because it's pretty wrong right now.
Yeah, very.
300 to 1,000 is a pretty big difference, and they've constructed now the memorial to the unknown, and so there's a lot more information, and they've done just an amazing job, and they're a real model for, speaking of Penn Park,
yeah,
of really how to not only restore, but to really make public. They're so good at advertising, if you will, this resource. And it is one of the few sites of African-American significance that the city owns. So, I mean, all of these sites need to be honored and taken really good care of. So I don't think we should just let this slip. It's going to have to be done at some point, and I don't see why not doing it now.
So do we,
And by the way,
we need a motion on this?
on the
Jeff?
plaque, right?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Well, a
I
question.
one further. Yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
No, I was just going to ask if the Daughters of Zion group already has replacement language proposed, or like I'd be all for updating the sign. But
That's a great question.
It-
I
it-
can find out.
Well, yeah, I've already talked to Edwina at length, and that is what she is. The language is what she proposed. Also, by the way, I've talked to Jane Smith. I talked to Edwina at length about Penn Park, and so getting a lot of good ideas from them as well. So on that, but yeah, the plaque as worded in what we shared with you is what we reviewed with them and what they recommended.
Dee Dee, I had one follow-up question for what you said. You said that it was quite wrong. What were you specifically saying?
Oh, just really the numbers of burials. I mean, it's very specific.
Just the
about
numbers.
how many burials. There's only 150-ish headstones, but
Right.
they, at that time of the sign, we knew there were 300.
Yeah.
And now
Right.
we know that there are 1,000 something. So
Yeah.
I'm being dramatic, but it is
Yeah,
wrong.
it's 651, right?
641.
641.
I believe is the number. And now, again, this is what the evidence suggests. And so always to be clear with what the ground penetrating radar can tell you. And the only way to be absolutely certain on something like this is like what they did at UVA, and you pull back that top 6 inches of soil and you can actually determine the grave shaft. So we've not gone that far, and I don't believe there's any intent to at Daughters of Zion, and so same situation with at Penn Park. So I know I'm being, stressing specific words here, but the language is, these are what is estimated. This is what the evidence suggests, but we still don't know.
Well, look,
At DOC.
I'd just like to clarify that the other reason that they know there are a lot of more people interred there than there are headstones is because they've done, Jane Smith has just been amazing doing incredible research where you find the death notices, the obituaries, the notices in the paper, they say, and will be interred at the site, there's like 4 different names for it, but so they know, and they say, but there's no headstone for that person. We know they're interred there. So that's one thing. Ground penetrating was another. That showed up even more. But there's always, we know for sure there's many more people interred there than there are headstones.
I mean, the only thing I would say about the proposed changes is that it's as long, if I'm correct in looking at the right one, it's still so specific. Talks about being, let's see, the cemetery may contain as many as 641 graves. So it may be that, but if you generalize the text just a little bit more, then you won't need to keep redoing it every time there's more information dug up. So one
I think
idea
that's
would just be to,
I think that's a big concern of mine is that while that is a big difference, it's also a very expensive change to make, that it's $2,000. And I guess the two things that I have on that are that it is an important, but it is not a significant change to what is on the text besides the number. And as this is a pretty rapidly evolving and situation that we're learning a lot more about as more research is done, whether we would next month find that we wanted to add something additionally or find more graves, or it's such a rapidly changing thing as we actually start to look into this historical artifact in our city that has been ignored for years. I think the other thing that I'd like to see is with the preservers of the Daughters of Zion Cemetery, whether they think that updating the plaque and spending $2,000 on that is the thing that they would want to do with that money allocated to the cemetery, or whether there are other things like perhaps marking the actual graves to visually show that it's not just an empty field, but there are actually humans there.
And I think they are having discussions about, similarly at the same thing at Penn Park. How do you recognize? Do you even do it? The money is not allocated to Daughters of Zion. There's an agreement. It is city property. Park and Recs maintains it and works with them. Historic resources. There's a document where the different groups and Daughters of Zion, and Dee Dee, you can speak to it better, but it's I think more a volunteer group, and so it's sort of everyone working together. But this is Historic Resource Committee funding that you can use as you see fit. I think there is some merit to saying, talking to Edwina and the others and saying, what do you foresee in anything the additional research may be bringing out, that we want to make sure we capture in a costly sign. But as far as whether they would use money, this isn't money that's going to them if this plaque is not replaced.
Right. Yeah, I do understand that.
Okay.
But I think that they're at least representative of the stake. I mean, they are probably the representatives and the stakeholders who we are doing this work for. And so I would say that their opinion on this is of primary importance, far more than mine is.
All right, and I was gonna say so we did a couple things. One, we've been in touch with DHR, and we'll make sure we update the National Register nomination. Second, we talked with the folks at DOZ about should we change the marker, and so this is language that came from them. So this is very much what they are interested in doing. But as I said, I think if there's a reasonable concern about, something might change, we can certainly raise that. But as far as what they would like to see, that's what was shared with you.
Yeah, so I think those are some great suggestions. Oops, wait. Oh yeah, I'm not unmuted. I think those are great suggestions, and they would probably really welcome them. And I would think that maybe, if they take those suggestions and come back next month, and I mean, I'd love to get the money allocated upon approval of language, at least.
All right, so again, to be clear, the language is what they.
Right, but there was
Yeah.
just some suggestions.
Yes.
So yeah, right, and
If
Right,
were
because
good. They were
You
good.
don't want to say 641 and then they find that they're at
That's-
640.
I understand. I got you.
Right.
I could talk to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're fine.
Yeah.
Okay, just for those of you who are newer to the committee, Edwina St. Rose was a member of this committee for several years and was sitting on the committee at the time that she and her colleague Bernadette Whitsett initiated the revival of the Daughters of Zion and all of this research. So in some ways, it's kind of an outgrowth of work of this committee. And kind of a legacy project that we continue to follow at regular intervals. So it's sort of part of the city's equity legacy in a way. So that takes us to other business, and we have 3 of those. It's great that the Burley High School nomination has moved forward. Do you want to update us on that, Jeff?
So I'm still, the Virginia State Review Board for the Department of Structural Resources on, I think, September 17th did approve listing Burley, Jackson P. Burley Middle School, or actually Jackson P. Burley High School on the Virginia Landmarks Register. And that nomination has now gone to the Department of the Interior. And we expect, Mark Wagner thinks we should hear by the end of October, first or second week of November, about the National Register listing. And we don't expect any issues with that. So the only thing we would, I've been asked by the Burley alum is if the city can help with putting the small, like I sent in the package, the small plaques on the building, but say, this site is on the National Register, this site's on the Virginia Landmarks Register. So I just wanted to share that. We can discuss that once it hopefully in November when we get the National Register. But that was something that you all, again, could approve when we get there. And then and Dee Dee pointed out, and thank you, but the Ivy Creek Natural Area, the Carr Greer Farmstead, which is co-owned by the city and the county, their board nominated it for the Virginia Landmarks Register and the National Register. So it was also approved for the VLR and is also going to the feds now for the National Register. So hopefully we'll have both of those to celebrate in early November.
Jeff, just if I could interrupt for a moment, maybe that's something we put on our list of issues to talk about is when and how we participate in providing a plaque when something is listed on the National Register, because it's something we've talked about doing and we really haven't done that in the past. Maybe we want to have a budget each year for those, or it's only for the ones that we actively participate in, or something like that, so that we just kind of have some guidance for how we deal with these recognitions when they come forth.
And did you mention, I'm sorry, I was looking up these audio tours. The 3 things we just mentioned all have audio tours. And the first 2, Daughters of Zion and Burley High School, have legacy voices. They're authentic voices narrating. The third one is me, but for Ivy Creek. But it's an interesting example of digital history, just so you know. But Jeff, did you mention the Albemarle Training School historic marker, which I know is not city?
Yeah, I didn't realize that was being pursued. That's the thing where there's like somebody said a corner of it behind a bush somewhere up on.
It's on the ground. It's a really good, in the Albemarle Training School was the Jefferson School of the county. And and Jefferson and Albemarle Training School came together to become Burley. So, I mean, it's a hugely important piece of the puzzle. It is county though, but it's being unveiled sometime this month or next month. And we're talking this week about how to do that.
Oh, fantastic. And that's the school where Jesse Salmons was the principal of the school. Let me ask a question, see if anybody knows this story. You all were following earlier in the year, the county was talking about renaming, I can't remember the name of the high school over there. That's the small high school that's in the old Rose Hill Elementary School. And I talked to some folks with the county school board. They said, what do you know about this? And I was like, it's so hidden back there. You don't think about it, but looking at the maps, it was constructed around the same time as Burley. And I'm just really curious if it's that, what is it back in there?
Wasn't the Piedmont Industrial Institute?
That was a wood frame building down on Henry Street, I believe, Henry or Concord. Okay. And it was built in like 1900, burned down 1902, something like that. So I talked to Steve Thompson about that. That was not the same. But this is the county school there past the Quaker Meeting House.
Right.
And I've just wondered if it's a companion school to Burley that, I don't know, I've just never thought about it.
I think it was a county African-American elementary school.
So do I. It was Rose Hill, wasn't it?
I think it was called Rose Hill
Rose Hill Elementary, right. But it's just the time.
And what I've never known is if there was a connection in the naming from the Rose Hill that's near Simeon, because, there's a Rose Hill church and school. And I don't know if that replaced that school or was a continuation of that name. I'm just not clear on that.
Yeah. There's a photograph I found in the files. It said Old Rose Hill School. Like, oh my gosh! And Steve said, no, that thing's out near past Monticello. It's a different.
It's just if you turn at Simeon, where the stone building is. That's always a succession of restaurants.
Right.
If you just go down that road a little bit and turn on the right, there's a church and a school. It's not a Rosenwald school, but it would. If you saw it, you would perhaps wonder if it was a Rosenwald school.
Okay.
But I don't know if they intentionally kept the name Rose Hill and transferred it into this school in the city or not. I always assumed that it was a kind of economy move, that they were running buses to Burley so they could run, double up on buses to have transport kids to an elementary and Burley at the same time. But I don't know that. I'm just wondering if there wasn't some economy of scale there to locate them close together, since that was in the segregated era.
It's another thread, and I get questions. People ask things all the time, and I just got contacted the other day. Somebody asked me, why is my street named Raymond Street? I was like, I don't know. And, but in looking at that, I found some other interesting things, just like with Penn Park. I was contacted by a member of the Gilmer family about, having a burial there. And so it was like, you get out there and go, hey, wonder what this is. So it's always interesting how these little corners of the city, there really are questions that, I'm always like, well, I'll ask Margaret, and if she doesn't know, then nobody does. But but there are a lot of these, and it's really amazing. We probably could spend an awful lot of time, again, pulling at these threads and finding things that just simply nobody ever realized. So, but that's where we are on the update on Burley and on the other places, and I'll let you know what the National Register folks say.
Okay, I think we need to make up a little bit of time, and we have several more items here. One being the proposal that we've received on the museum.
And that, is something that we were CC'd, it was sent to the city council and also sent to us. And I've seen some correspondence from city councilors where there's been reference to the Historic Resources Committee, this, Historic Resource Committee, that. I mean, it really, I think it's an intriguing idea. I don't think there's any action here for you all to take unless you wish to express an opinion to council. But I don't know quite what you all as a committee can do.
I'm just wondering if it would fall under kind of the purview of the monuments money, like the Mellon grants or whatever they're doing, if that would be worth applying for that.
Joanne, take it from here.
Yeah, I was really just after Robert sent out our agenda. I got the alert about the Mellon Foundation funds that are available, $250 million for their monuments project. And I think that poor hashtag Charlottesville. I think we can kind of leverage. I think our what's happened to us and the fact that we're really trying to grapple with this, in an honest way. It's not just, kind of a pity thing, but we're really trying to apply for some of these funds. And so I really, and that's a much longer discussion, and I actually have to leave in 5 minutes because I have a talk to give on racism. Imagine that. But yeah, I think we should think about, as a historic resource committee, in consultation with council, about what are our goals. And some of these goals have already been articulated in the BRC final report, that Margaret and Rachel, worked on so hard, about, kind of priorities for, augmenting the slave auction block, which is, something we're already working on, and augmenting, Black history sites and, and this sort of thing. So it's an intriguing idea, but I think we need to think more capaciously about, if we were to kind of dream big and kind of, apply for a Mellon grant, and I would be willing to, to help write a grant for that, if that would be helpful to city staff. I know y'all are already very taxed, but I think, it might be worth, looking at this, seeing about, private donors, maybe matching Mellon or, or this sort of thing. It's worth considering. I don't know, that particular building would be millions of dollars, I'm guessing, to buy. If it were to even be possible, and if that's even I don't even know if that's the best course of action here. But I think we should think about, as HRC, what we might be able to do in applying for Mellon money. You know what I mean? We've already articulated some, or the city has, the community has articulated some goals here. And maybe this could be a possibility for moving forward and kind of being able to think big about it. You know, what would it mean if money were no object, you know?
Right.
What would it look like? What would we really want? And just like throw everything out there, ask for a whole loaf. Maybe we only get 3/4 or half, but you know, to just think about that.
Is there a deadline, stated deadline for those funds? I
They
didn't
said
get it.
that it's a 5-year project. And so I'm imagining, and I have to do more research, of kind of rolling deadlines or something like that. You know, you just kind of apply. But again, I think that Charlottesville would be a really good candidate, you know, for some of this, you know, especially, you know, kind of what's going, you know, we already have had a process going on since 2016 with the BRC and then continuing, you know, and then of course we have a whole process of, you know, kind of removal of some of this Confederate statuary that's still kind of ongoing, you know. And so I think if we could present our city as a case of, you know, that, you know, we have experience with community engagement already. That's ongoing, you know, with you know, got stalled, you know, by COVID, but, you know, with the slave auction block process, you know, and that it's possible to, you know, and especially as these monuments get removed. I'm in other discussions and I've got a meeting actually later this afternoon, actually with other folks that are talking about kind of further community engagement on public spaces here and the Mellon thing too. So anyway, I think there's, you know, a lot of room to think about this, and there's, you know, energy around this, and this could actually help us, I think, you know. That's just what I think.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times when communities are thinking about big investments like in a new museum or something like that, there is a kind of a planning process. You know, you might work through some feasibility studies for different locations, or, you know, trying to make sure your budget matches the real work that's required to update a site, for example. As you say, Jelaine, you know, a building like that would be probably a challenge to update for public access, you know, to ensure universal accessibility and things like that. I mean, that's in the weeds, but it may be that we can come up with an appropriate sort of phasing of investigation to fulfill a goal like that. You know, I think the themes that were identified in the proposal were great and appropriate, and really answer a lot of the question and demand that the city has expressed over the years. And so then the next question is, does that place in that building, will that help fulfill that goal? And if it doesn't, or if it's too expensive, are there other locations that would do it just as well? And then how to integrate it and kind of curate it with the rest of the historical places and themes and interpretation that's going on locally. So I feel like we should, I totally agree with you. We should, I think it's worth asking for everything you think you might need, and maybe you get some of it and maybe you get all of it, and it's worth trying. I do think I saw a name on the Mellon Foundation website, someone to call for questions, and you know, I think it's worth reaching out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it, you know, and it may not be practically feasible at that specific location, just, you know, given, I mean, you know, the cost of it, or like you said, you know, ADA accessibility or something. Although if it were just kind of on the first floor, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that could be challenging. Or, you know, kind of given the several goals that we have, you know, about, you know, kind of public spaces that are being cleared out, you know, not that there should be a one-to-one replacement. I think that we really need to think, we, the community now, really need to think about kind of public spaces and what we want, you know. So I wouldn't want to, yeah, you know, just kind of given all these priorities and stuff, you know, maybe sinking that much, you know, funds into one site might not be feasible given the ground, literally and figuratively, that we want to cover. I've got to leave now. Sorry, folks, but anyway, please catch me up later, and I'm going to go continue this history work and looking at race and public spaces in my next 2 meetings here. That's where I'm headed.
All right, Jelaine.
All right, bye.
Good to see you. Take care.
Thanks, Jelaine. I'll take the next item, which is the Preservation Piedmont PAPA event report. For those of you that are new to this, there's sort of a regional group called an acronym of PAPA, which is the Piedmont Area Preservation Alliance. Generally held an annual event in the fall at a historic site, and the various groups that belong to this give an annual report, and they're usually food and drink and talks and those kinds of things. But now we live in the virtual world, and the Historic Resource Committee has usually participated in that and given a report. And so Elisa and I received a letter from Preservation Piedmont that's coordinating it, asking if we would report. Of course, we don't have that much to report since we really were only working from January to March, but I agreed to give the report at the PAPA meeting, and I think we're probably all invited to participate in the Zoom. So that's kind of where we are. If there are any things that people would like me to report on in particular, just shoot me an email and I'm happy to add that to it.
Jenny, if that meeting is open to the public, do you mind sending out the link to the committee in case people want to know what else is
Yeah,
happening?
I'm not sure how they're handling the invitations, but usually the members of the organizations are invited to this event, which has been very nice in the past, and we've met at Monticello and Montpelier and various places at the university and private homes. It's usually a really very nice event, and it's kind of neat to find out what different groups around the region are doing. So I'm not sure how they're handling that this year, but I think they probably will invite the boards of all of these groups that are invited to participate.
Do you know if we'll know who's presenting? I mean, I've been to it in the past, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think at the Preservation Piedmont meeting, I think that they said 15 of 30 groups had responded, but I think they still have another week to respond as to whether they're going to report or not.
I just want to be sure that both of these nominations to the Historic Register are reported on, the Burley and the Ivy Creek Riverview Farm.
Yeah, I think Ivy Creek was on the list, but I can't remember if they had responded or not responded.
Okay.
But I think there's still a week or so for them to do that. You could. I'm
a member of Piedmont.
Yeah, you could write to. Well, just write to Preservation Piedmont.
Okay.
And then they'll get it to the right committee people.
Okay. Great.
Okay, so did you have announcements, Robert or Jeff?
I don't have any announcements.
Does anyone else have announcements? Okay. I guess that was an announcement of sorts. And so the final wrap up to talk about items for our agenda, I think we've been collecting those all along the way.
I'd just like to clarify, I think a lot of the work that the committee is going to need to do moving forward is going to depend on just progress made by the subcommittees. And I'll talk with our communications staff moving forward about the possibility of using breakout rooms. I think that sounds like a really productive option. But that being said, that's not going to be able to fill the time that we need or to complete these projects, especially the markers. So I'll be emailing members of the individual subcommittees to maybe work out some sort of work plan to make sure that you can continue to make progress on the walking tour maps and the court square markers, since you decided you did want to move forward with those projects. I think it will require a little bit of heavy lifting outside of subcommittee meetings and just committing yourselves to writing these outside of these discussions. And then maybe if we do breakout rooms at the next meeting or the December meeting, there can be a more expedited review process for those. But I'll just be in contact with all of you, and hopefully we can come up with some sort of work plan for that.
And just to remind everybody that it's 3 or more members that triggers FOIA. 2 people can meet outside of FOIA, but not 3 or more.
And may I make a request for, do you have a list of not just the committee members, but all the subcommittees what they are and who belongs to what.
I have a list
curious to see
somewhere,
that.
and I'll make sure you see it, Rachel. I'll make sure
Thank
to
you so
share it with you.
much.
Mhm.
I appreciate it.
And now that we have new members, those might need to be readjusted a little bit.
Sure, Rachel and Phil, you're
Let's
more
all
than
look
welcome
at
to.
Rachel as the chair.
Yeah.
And so can
in
I just
consultation.
clarify where we are on the history, the naming now? Are we supposed to do something before the next meeting as members, just contributing, or are we looking to approve support for a select few next time? I mean, I just wonder when people ask what I can say.
No, I'm already getting emails. What happened? What happened? I think that I think it would be helpful to I mean, there's the two that are musicians. I don't know anything about them, and the applicant didn't. I think Cliff Fox submitted both of them. Didn't even pick a street. So, you know, I kind of have to, I guess it's on me to say, what do you want to do this, and who, well, how, but I think that if there is, I don't know if there's much. I think there's the individuals that Ms. Hudson submitted, but otherwise they are, kind of recognizing places or things. I don't know about.
Henry Martin's in there. That's another.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And
yeah, that's a really, really interesting one because it's tied
and
to a place.
they've done a tremendous amount. Now, the Pres Piedmont didn't particularly indicate where they'd like that done. I think now, if there's some ideas and suggestions, that would be helpful. But I think to go through it and just so that we can, even if it's in November, to say there's nothing to talk about here, but just that would be helpful. And there was the one on the indigenous people. I don't know, did you, Sally? I'm sorry, I wasn't able to read everything. I'm getting flooded with stuff to read. I feel like I'm back in grad school. And by the way, Robert is in grad school now. Congratulations. But I think, just some research and or any
creating
thoughts.
a policy first would be helpful. Like,
okay.
In order to be able to fairly evaluate each application, we need a policy before we make decisions, I think.
And Sally, do you think we should form a subcommittee to start that, or is that something that individuals should do and then bring it back before the entire board next month?
Could, or if we want to talk about it over email and come up with a policy next month, or have a suggestion for council what the policy should look like.
Again, be a little careful of FOIA and email.
If you were to form a subcommittee as well, you might not be able to meet immediately. So.
But I think we should, I just fear that we're going to go like this committee can do for months and months.
Right.
I don't think the policy needs that much amendment because it is decent, but
you could do it quickly.
I think, and to put a limitate, how long should some of the maps that people suggested for the streetways are longer than others. Just having some sort of clarity around what we want to do, I think would be helpful.
Well, and if you don't mind, can I, just so I can clarify what I tell council, if we're going to, and we're going to discuss it in November, but if it's about, it's a suggestion we revise the policy or have some ideas of a policy, it would be a policy recommendations to council before this committee makes recommendations on these individual requests. And it's somewhat saying that with that in mind, really defer to council to decide on these individual names that have been proposed. I don't know, sort of a circular argument might be going on there, but
I think I would characterize this as, we think that this is an important issue. We don't want to rush into making decisions on these specific names immediately. We want to take a step back, formulate a very specific policy, formulate a process for evaluating them, engage the community on more on these, not just the not just the applicants themselves, and then decide on them. And I think that this could be seen as just kicking the can down the road and not making a decision. But I think in this particular case, like, this is an important thing, and the conversations that we have around memorializing these people are the important work. That every time we bring up whether the McIntyre Room or 3rd Street should be named for Gregory Swanson, we talk about Gregory Swanson.
Well, is it not the case that anything that we come up with is a recommendation to council anyway?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, we could, stress the strength of our feeling about any of them, but ultimately it's going to be their decision.
I'm trying to get at, I don't want to tell people that the committee will be discussing the individual markers or individual names in November, and then we get to November and it's well, we're not going to discuss these until it, I'd rather just say now that we can report back to council. Thank you very much, but there's a larger policy issue that needs to be resolved, and if you council wish to designate these, that's in your purview now. Maybe the response would be, we don't have any strong feelings about these as far as they don't do it, because it is in their purview, but for us to make, or for the committee to make a recommendation on these individual requests, that the committee wants to have a policy for that decision making. So
would it be, I'm sorry, would it be useful, Sally, did the research that you did just briefly get circulated to council? Because that's not taking a position, but it's really useful information in terms of knowing what
I
peer.
didn't, but I could.
Yeah.
Well, and I can
so
include
that's
that in what we send, but it's just managing expectations here, because this has been presented as, to some, particularly I guess the folks that have nominated things, you all are going to make a decision, and it was also circulated that you all will be making a decision about that museum. So I had to push back on that. But
who circulated that?
It's just being it's the calls from the media. It's who circulated? I know, Jenny, you were you had been in touch with those folks initially, right? This is about the museum.
The museum? No, I was aware that about
Okay.
the museum. I have not spoken or emailed anyone about the museum.
Oh, we received, the packet was submitted to the clerk, and she circulated it to us.
Well, I've received it, but I didn't respond. I didn't see it as in our purview unless council delegated us some responsibility to investigate it or advocate for it. I mean, I think we could discuss it as we did.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just go back to the fact that I don't know who set expectations for the applicants that they would have an imminent decision on this at any point in this whole process. But I think that we need to continue to convey that we take these applications very seriously, that we, that we see strengths and conflicts among them, which I think are apparent to the applicants, particularly the two that have applied for the same street. And that we want to create a good process that we can evaluate these and make good decisions about them. And that the fact that we are delaying, what can be seen as delaying this is really that we want to make a good decision, and that it's not that we don't like their applications, that we don't like their proposals. It's that we take them seriously. And that we want to.
I would add a couple of things too. I mean, one is that we don't think that the policy is bad either. We just think that bringing an extra level of specificity to it will help council make good decisions. So, and Sally and Phil have both talked about that, and I think that's important. And the other thing that we agreed earlier during our discussion was that some of these applications do not have any bearing on historic resources. And so there's some that we can't, but we don't necessarily see some of the applications as being in our purview. So I would think that next month we discuss some potential additions to the policy to help council make clear decisions.
And I agree with Rachel on that. That if I've given the impression that I think the policy is wrong or incorrect, that's not what I mean. I think it just needs to be clarified some and made to be more robust. That I think it's what I say directionally correct. It just needs to be clarified a little bit.
What I'll do is, sorry, I'm getting pinged that I'm supposed to be at another meeting about something.
And we were on schedule until 3 minutes ago. So I think with all of the,
I think we're reasonably well.
We've done pretty well.
Done a lot. What I will do is circulate something just to get your thoughts on it, because I want to articulate this correctly to council and also, make sure that people understand what our role is in this, and that Robert and I we will be able to figure out our notes. This has all been very helpful. So I'm going to go talk about some streets, I think. Robert, if you can take it from here, and again, good to see you all. I love this whole Brady Bunch look. My tape fell off, so that's why you have to keep seeing my face now. But have a great weekend, y'all, and take care.
Thanks.
Thank you. So do people want to comment on these two possible items? It says April agenda, but I don't really mean the comp plan update and the 10th and page survey. They seem like good things to me. I'd like to be updated on them. Should we keep it on the agenda for Rachel and Phil and Sally to?
Yeah, I think the 10th and page thing is really particularly important, and it plays into some of our decisions that we're going to be making for historic, and we'll just inform.
Yeah.
We'll inform more. So yeah, that's exciting.
I'm not sure if
I would love for us to sort of carve this out, that we have enough time to be able to review PIFs and nominations before they go in, because doing them the way they're done with a consultant, and the consultants are all very good and knowledgeable, but sometimes they don't have local knowledge, and they could be tweaked a little bit if we saw them sooner. And if they're in our packet, then people who follow us get to see them as well, and they can weigh in. So I feel kind of strongly about that one.
It was really interesting being involved with the Ivy Creek one. It was just I'd never been involved with one before, and it was really helpful to get a lot of ears before it went in, because there's a lot of people who know a lot of stuff. And it could be true there.
So then there are some other, I don't know about these other items. I think they're things that are kind of ongoing, and I'll leave that to the new folks to wrangle out next month. Is there any new business or anything else anybody wants to bring up before we adjourn?
Again, can I just clarify where are we with the Daughters of Zion sign? Oh, there with the language.
My understanding was that Jeff was going to go back and ask them about changing the language.
And so we didn't approve the marker before. So we still need to approve the marker.
Yes.
Money. Okay.
We didn't really approve anything except the minutes today.
And I would like to clarify that I gave full credit to one person for doing all that research. They've done so much research. Go to their Facebook page. Everybody go to their Facebook page. It's such a great model of research, and all of the presenters have done it. It's amazing. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
One point on the agenda with the comprehensive plan, there's been some discussions around, there's a historic specific thing and some language around that, and some possibly outdated language with regards to heritage tourism and allusions to that. And I think that we have an interest in having some very, having some really good language about our work in creating an inclusive history and historical memory of Charlottesville, and how that relates to the comprehensive plan and tourism and the various ways that feeds into other aspects.
Else anybody wants to bring up?
Jenny, thank you for all your leadership.
I'm glad I only have to do it today.
Thank you to all of you who are stepped up to lead us in the future.
Yes, many thanks to everybody. Look, it's great to see you again and look forward to seeing you next month or whenever that is, right? So if there's nothing else, I'm going to adjourn us until our next meeting in November.
Okay,
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Robert, for all your help.
Thanks,
You're
Robert.
welcome.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Mm.